problem would be you'd remember it only too well. So I don't think it should be a socially acceptable excuse.
Well, look, as with all Hitchens conversations, we could go for hours, even just to exhaust the the heart puns and the limericks. But I thought we might open it up now to you guys who've come along this evening. There are several microphones through the hall. Interestingly, I think there are 4, but they're numbered 2 through 5, which I assume means that's number 1. But if you would like to ask Christopher a question, please do come up to the microphones. There's we've got 2 here, 3 here. I don't know where 4 is. Where's 4? Just there. And you're most welcome to pose a question. Keep it relatively brief, or else I'll Tony Jones you and take it as a comment. So we'll start over at number 2 here. You, sir.
With greatest respect, Hitch, given that you're being very reflective about your own life and your experiences, I was wondering if you had a few comments about Eric Prince, if you know the man that I'm talking about when I say that.
The artist formerly known?
No. No, that would be the CEO of Z, now Blackwater, now Z, with his own Christian dominionist take on the war on terror. And I was wondering if you'd read Jeremy Scahill's book when considering your position on...
I have to say it's gone past my bat, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, that was a good start. Excellent. We might go to microphone number 5. Thank you.
Being in a hopeless position when being waterboarded, would you think twice about God being great or not?
I didn't. Sorry, could you ask that again?
Could you give it some welly?
Yeah, I heard being in a hopeless position of being waterboarded. Could you?
Would you think twice about God being great or not?
Didn't get it.
Sorry. As
Dudley Moore used to say, can't hear a blind word you say.
Yeah. So would you think twice about God being great or not?
What was the preface to that?
Having been waterboarded.
Yeah. I collect non sequiturs as well, by the way. Of which that's a real peach, I've got to tell you. It's going in the next.
Well, we're going to get through a lot of questions tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That's one of the upsides. Let's say that. Let's try.
Bring it on.
Let's try microphone number 4.
Yeah, a question I wanted to ask the panel of which you were part earlier today, but I didn't get time. By way of illustration, you've said once before that it is a cultural achievement that we no longer use a certain 6-letter word starting with N, and in the context of needing to be on our guard against self-censorship with vague language for the sake of things like political correctness, how do we identify them?
Right. I think I got at least the first half of it. It's a basically, you're resuming an earlier session in the Writers' Festival to begin with, but you say it's a cultural achievement not to use a 6-letter word starting with M.
N.
N, right, okay, well that does prove how difficult it is to hear up here.
Oh, sorry.
Could you repeat the second half of the question? This is just going to go fantastically.
Why don't you...
Yeah.
Take it back.
Yes.
Tell them all to sit down.
That's right. Look, we'll try a female voice.
It was nicer with...
How about that?
Didn't you think it was nicer when it was just the two of them?
I was having a ball. We'll try one down here.
Regret going to a female voice.
What?
No, Christopher, I'm a great admirer of your work.
Thank you.
Particularly your views on atheism.
Yes.
Which people of my generation particularly can ascribe to. But you wrote an article I'd like to take issue with in Vanity Fair, perhaps maybe 3 years ago. It was a brief article where you claimed that women were not funny.
Yeah.
I've had many discussions about this article with my friends. And I suppose I'd like you to talk to that, because the way I can sort of rebut that is, I know that you're a lover of literature, and I look at women like George Eliot and Jane Austen, and I think that how do we define a word like funny, and who owns the interpretation of that? Because, you know, in drawing rooms and in you know, in
I think we've got
kitchens and okay, you've got the gist. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like you to talk to that, if you would.
You get it?
I got some of that.
No.
Seemed to be some shrill, humorless bitch. The thing is this, and she began very sweetly by saying that atheism was an important principle, which it is, and I'll just say this about that. One of the threads of my book is the struggle to find a position that's consistently anti-totalitarian. I think that's a responsibility everybody has, whatever their other politics are. And the original form of dictatorship, as George Orwell points out, is theocratic. The first declaration of independence you have to make before you can really assail the totalitarian position is to say that there can be no celestially imposed, unalterable dictatorship. That's the most sinister kind of war. Now, to the lady's point. Some people think that by asking the question why women aren't funny, which, by the way, is making the assumption that they're not, that I mean that there are no female comedians or wits. Not so. But you will notice of Roseanne Barr and Sarah Silverman Say, for example, both of whom wrote to me saying they thought I was right about this, that the female comedian is either a dyke or a Jew. Or in some other way, a man. And they're funny to precisely that extent. And that there are biological and evolutionary reasons why this should be so. If you, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you, if you tonight are talking to a friend who says, if it's a she, I've just found a great new chap, it's a moral certainty that she'll say, and he really makes me laugh. You've heard it, haven't you? When did you last hear a guy saying, I've found a really precious new squeeze, and then he'll say a couple of other things that I'm not going to share with you. And he's not going to say, and she keeps me in stitches. Or if he does...
Does that say something about women or the priorities of men?
No, both, because women don't need to be funny. They can be if they want, but they have no need to be in order to make themselves attractive. They are, to men, if you follow me, already attractive. Whereas for most men, what are their chances of getting laid if they're not funny? It's all we've got, darling, and we cherish it. Okay?
But I must say, I think there's an interesting point that arises in your memoir, follows from that question, and in particular your answer to it. It did strike me in the book that...
Oh, we're back.
Sorry, yes, yeah, for sure.
Did you miss me?
It was terrible. It was far cleaner in the masses. It did strike me that you seem to write, I think, quite viciously about women often. And I think you seem to be far less generous.
Well, tell me what I was vicious about.
You refer to the incident of visiting the prostitute with Martin Amis, where you describe her as a, I'm trying to remember the adjective you use, but it's the something bitch. Avaricious bitch.
Avaricious
That's
bitch.
right, yeah.
She was. She was a greedy little minx, yeah.
Well, without...
You could see it in her eyes.
Without citing chapter and verse...
And she did have, I add, she had one of the most evil faces I've ever seen on a human being.
Well,
she was...
You're somewhat affirming the premise of my question as we proceed.
She was bewitching, in other words. But there, I mean, I have a duty to verisimilitude. I mean, that was the case with that terrible cat house on Lexington Avenue.
But you wrote
the most sordid morning I've ever spent in my life.